From the bottom of my heart, this was one of the most captivating interviews I've ever done in my entire career, both on YouTube and not on YouTube. So thank you. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to your favorite show on the internet, Raw Law Unfiltered, with your favorite host, the DUI Guy. Plus, today I have for you one of the most amazing shows I think I have ever recorded in the history of ever. With me are two guests, as you can see immediately to my right, their left, the other, whichever way I'm pointing is where they're sitting. You guys, I can't make this stuff up. They reached out to me, telling me after they watched the video with Liz Amazing about the RV situation going on with Grand Design and Tiffin and so on, that frames are being broken and damages are being swept under the rug by these companies. I mean, it's terrifying. We may have a potential multi-billion-dollar recall on our hands, and these companies are playing damage control, and they're trying to sweep it under the rug. They're trying to pay people off. They're trying to silence people, and we're going to share with you, actually, for the first time live on stream, a violation, an open and honest revocation and violation of an NDA, a $100,000 NDA, non-disclosure agreement by my guests. So without further ado, allow me to, I'll let my guests introduce themselves for the first time, because I'm so honored to have them on my channel.
Yeah, first of all, Larry, thanks so much for having us and for responding. When I saw your video with Liz Amazing, I just thought it's time for platforms like yours to continue helping us have a voice and speak up for what's happening. So thank you so much for that. I am Greg Carson. This is my wife, Kay. Say hi, Kay.
Hi.
Hi, Greg. Hi, Kay.
And we've been RVers since 2018, got our first one in that time, and we've been avid ever since. We're snowbirds. I should clarify that. We have a lot of snow. We go south, and life is good.
Gotcha. Okay. So Greg and or Kay, tell me first of all, let's begin at the beginning. What kind of RV do you have that went south?
Want me to take that one?
I'll take that one.
I'll tell you what, Larry, we have been 5-time Grand Design owners, 5 times since 2018. And our fourth one was a 2022 Solitude 380 FL, which was our dream camper. That was the one we wanted. We walked into it and fell in love with it. And we thought, this is, I'm 61. Kay is closing the gap. I'll let you divulge that if you want to. But that was the one that was going to take us into our retire years and to enjoy, and it did not work out that way.
What model Grand Design did you buy that went south?
That was the Grand Design Solitude 380 FL. And the ones that are showing the problems are the Solitudes and the Momentum lines. The Momentum line is the toy hauler.
What year did you buy it?
We bought it February 24th of 2022.
February 24th, 2022. So just over 2 years and 2 months ago.
Yes, sir.
When did you first start noticing problems?
We wintered last year, March, in Texas for 1 month. The rest of the time before that was in Arizona. And we decided that we were going to go back to Texas. So we left the RV in storage down there. We ended up going back to Arizona, which at the time we had 2 RVs. We had a Keystone Sprinter for just part-time use with smaller fifth wheel. So we took that one down to Arizona, and we got there Thanksgiving Day. And that Sunday, Thanksgiving weekend, we knew we wanted our Solitude. So I took off to Texas to go get it in Kerrville. And I hooked onto it. And as I was going down the highway, I started, and I'd been hearing about these problems, Larry. So I planned on being more proactive when I got it back to Arizona. So I was by myself and hauling it back to Arizona, watching in the rearview mirror like a bunch of other people had. You'll notice your truck bed like this, the fifth wheel sticking over it. And when you go over bumps and road imperfections and stuff, I'm watching the kingpin going up inside what's called the phylon. And that's the under part that covers the framing of the camper. So I'm watching the camper dipping down and doing this floating motion. And I thought to myself, I need a root canal I'm pretty sure I have frame flex. So I waited till I got back to Arizona and started doing a lot more investigating and measuring and checking. And I had kind of missed the boat, Larry, because there were deeper symptoms. And those symptoms were in the front of the camper. Ours was a front living room model. In the front of the camper, everybody kept telling me, you need to check your cabinetry, your woodwork, look inside the cabinets, look at the walls inside the cabinets. So I opened all that, I emptied everything out, grabbed a flashlight, and my jaw about hit the floor. The cabinets were falling apart. They were imploding. One of the outside walls on the door side, which is, if you picture a vehicle, Larry, the passenger side of a vehicle would be what we refer to as the door side of a camper, because that's the side you exit and enter. The non-door side would typically be the driver's side of a vehicle because there's no door. So up front, if you can picture the front of a fifth wheel, it comes like this and curves down. There's what they call an expansion joint right there. And that expansion joint is cut in there to allow for a certain amount of flex and movement. So in that expansion joint, when I went outside and started looking, I noticed my trim cover on the expansion joint was almost falling off, and the wall on what we call the superstructure up front of the camper was pulling away from the frame about 3/8 of an inch, almost a half an inch. And I knew at that point I've got a problem.
A half an inch?
Close to a half an inch, the wall. And mine was not the worst that you would find on a lot of the pages on Facebook or YouTube.
When was this discovery?
I discovered this about the third-ish week of February, I believe, because we followed about the middle of February, Larry.
Yeah.
So when I found this
Yes,
year.
This year.
Yes, sir. This year.
Oh, so just a couple of months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let me just fast forward real quick, just for a second, because the non-disclosure agreement that you signed, agreeing to receive payment, for your silence and deleting all your posts and not mentioning anything on social media and everything, that was signed on Pi Day, March 14th.
That is correct.
Today, the day of this recording, and this is probably going to premiere sometime in the very, very early week of May, the first week of May, I would venture a guess. So you went from 2 years after the purchase, February, you discover the structural damage, because there's no other way to describe it. This is structure. If this was a building, you're looking at a cracked column of your base of your house. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, pretty much so.
And if you're not careful, what's going to happen? The roof is going to cave, and the thing is going to split in half.
If we were to speak in terms of what we would consider catastrophic failure, the worst case scenario would be when you are connected to your truck, the tow vehicle, and your what we call the kingpin is connected to your hitch, the fifth wheel hitch. The worst case scenario would be total failure of the kingpin in where the camper would drop right down on top of the truck. And the possibilities of disconnecting from the truck or something of that nature would be conceivable in a very catastrophic event. I have not heard of that happening. I've personally had a friend who had almost 3 inches of movement, which had to come close to being at that state. When I had conversations with Grand Design's higher ups about the potential of catastrophic failure, they tried to convince me that that's not possible. It can't happen. Larry, I'm a licensed contractor of almost 39 years, going on 40 years. I know a thing or two about building, about engineering, about how structures go together, about framing, about plumb level and square, about upload, upshift, download, weight capacities, and it's a problem. It's a problem.
Okay, so now let's go back in time. We fast forwarded a little bit. Let's go back in time to February. You make the discovery. You're shocked. You look inside the cabinets. You understand the extent of the damage. This is no laughing matter. This is a serious infrastructural design failure. This is not just a flaw in the cosmetic design of the vehicle. It is structural. What do you do next?
The next procedure, Larry, is to contact either a dealership or the dealership you purchased from or Grand Design directly. Or let's say if you have a Keystone, Montana, they've been having problems as well. You contact the manufacturer and you create a case number. And what they do at that time is they instruct you to take it to a dealership or the dealership you purchased from so they can diagnose the problem. The problem with that is, and this is very well validated and documented, that a lot of dealerships out there don't know what the hell to do. For instance, I contacted, as requested, my dealership in Nevada, and when I spoke with them, they said, frame what? Frame who? Frame where? Frame when? What's frame flex? What frame failure?
Never heard of it.
Yeah, we never heard of that. What is that? And I'm thinking to myself, you've never heard of that. I know for a fact you received at least one, possibly two TSB service bulletins on this exact problem, how to measure, how to take care of it. So I knew I was getting nowhere with my dealership. So I went back to Grand Design and they said,
and let me just stop you right there. So the dealership is playing their cards of ignorance. We don't like the Italian mafia. We don't know nothing. We know see nothing. We know hear nothing. You shouldn't be coming to us. Go somewhere else. We made our money. We're not interested in refunds.
Yeah.
Yeah, at times, yes. Not going to deny that. I can say there are some really good dealerships out there. There are some really poopy dealerships out there. Unfortunately, I got stuck with a poopy one. I mean, it's bad when you live in Minnesota with a far more sparse population of RVers than you do the southern states where you have snowbirds. And when you call your dealership, who actually not who I purchased from, I purchased in Nevada, but when you call a dealership because you have connections in St. Cloud, Minnesota, a town of 30-some thousand people maybe, and they tell you, oh yeah, we've had 2 or 3 of those come through the door. 2 of them we were able to fix. 1 we had to send back to the factory. My first thoughts were, really? So what did I do? I went back across the river in person and talked to Mike. I asked him straight up, dude, here's the TSB on it. They're telling me you need to measure my frame flex so I can get help.
Sorry, there's that term again. What is TSB, if you don't mind my asking, Greg?
That would be a technical service bulletin, and that's
Okay.
something that Grand Design or Keystone or Forest River or whoever it might be sends out to dealerships that sell their product or to authorized service shops that work on a manufacturer's product. And that TSB, technical service bulletin, tells them exactly what to do. So when I went back to the dealership and confronted them face to face, I said, look, they're not helping me. Grand Design's not helping me until you measure my frame flex. You've gotten the TSB about it. Please help me out here. Help me, please. I mean, I'm literally begging. We're in deep duty here because we know we have a big problem. And again, I'm sorry, guys. I wish we could help you, etc. So I decided, number 1, let's be critical thinkers here. Number 2, I have a lot of things going for me here because being a contractor, we use a lot of lasers and levels and measuring methods to build a house, an addition, a deck, a gigantic storage building. So I pull out all my equipment and I start videotaping of me measuring for frame flex. I fill out the paperwork, and first of all, she asks me, how did you get that? How did you get that measure sheet? Where did you find that? That's supposed to come from either the SRTs or the dealerships. And I'm like, it's on Lippert's website. You sell Lippert frames. Don't make me do your job for you. So I went ahead and I did everything they asked me to, which included having to take our 41.5-foot fifth wheel, leave her behind, take it to a gigantic parking lot that was empty on a Sunday morning at like 9 a.m. so I could get photos that they requested of the unit hooked and unhooked from the truck so they could see that. So I jumped through all these hoops. I sent all my stuff back in to the warranty gal that I was dealing with. And she said, I'll have to talk to my supervisor because we don't typically let the customer do this. Well, obviously you
They weren't expecting someone with experience to take over. I can sense it, yeah.
Larry, I've been their worst nightmare. I promise you. Story
Ben,
short,
I think you still are, especially doing this video.
I think so.
Good for you,
Oh.
by the way. Let me just say that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. So after I finally went back and forth for like a week to 8-9 days, whatever it was, I'd have to look back at all the emails. They finally said, well, let me escalate this to another level. And I said, please do, because I want to get this taken care of. We have a problem. So it finally got escalated to a higher area in the warranty department. They decided to accept the claim because I had irrefutable proof. So that's that part of the story. Now you.
Wow. Now they have the report. They have the evidence. Are we still in February, or is that are we in March now?
February.
Yep. We're in February.
We're still in February. What do they do next? What is their response to your irrefutable evidence?
Sure. They said that we have good news. I got the phone call. Mr. Carson, good news. We accepted your claim. I'm like, that's good news. Yes, you're right. What's next? Well, lucky for you, we have one of our SRTs, their response team, service response team. Luckily for you, you're in Bullhead City, Arizona. We have a Grand Design rally currently taking place in Quartzsite, Arizona, and we have a couple of our SRTs there right now. What I'm going to do is call one of the SRTs who services where you are. Going to turn this over to him. He'll be calling you. He's going to come to your site and make sure that your camper is safe to tow and get back to the factory. So they know at this point, I know that they know, and they're not telling me that you must have had some pretty bad off rigs if you were telling me you have to deem if it's road worthy to tow back to your factory. Doesn't that tell you something, Larry, as an attorney? Might there be a safety issue here that they're not really letting the cat out of the bag? I don't know.
I've never heard the term safe to tow, not even in a catastrophic wreck. I don't think that's a term my ears have ever laid eardrums upon. I don't know. I'm trying to think of it.
Yeah.
Safe to tow.
Yeah.
That means they understand the potential for catastrophic damage, even as they're towing it back to the factory, and that this thing could essentially collapse in the middle of the highway as they're towing it with using, I assume, their fifth wheel or something of that nature.
I'll jump ahead to a quick part of our story.
Please.
Well, there's a lot in between that we're going to talk about, I'm sure. When our driver came after the buyout was agreed to, when their driver came the next day, actually it was that day when they agreed to buy us out. Yeah. We knew the driver was coming. When he came to our site, he drove up and he looks at our camper and he goes, "Ooh, 380, nice. What's wrong with it?" Frame flex. Oh, man. Well, for what it's worth, I was the very first driver for the company to take the very first unit back to Indiana. And when I was in New Mexico, what did he have to do?
Pull over.
He had to pull over. He said, because I thought I was going to fall off my truck. His exact words. And he said, we had to get an SRT out there and weld some gussets in and get it back together so it was safe to tow back to the damn factory. Yeah.
You can't make this stuff up.
Told you it's going to be juicy.
Wow. Okay, so, well, I think we're actually naturally almost in the chronological progression of events. You stated the next step, which you just... So you called the tech out, he arrived, he made you that statement, and does he have his the non-disclosure agreement with him to, like, sign, or what's going on there now?
No, sir. If we backtrack to when my appointment was with the SRT to come out to our site, that was March 4th, a day that will live in infamy.
What date did the tech show up?
So the driver came March 14th, I believe. March 13th.
March 13th. Okay,
yes,
so take me back between February and March. What are we missing? What's the timeline?
Yeah. So in that time frame, the SRT was scheduled to come out March 4th, my awesome mother's birthday. So I will remember that day forever. And so will thousands of viewers that have seen my channel. He comes out, introduces himself, kind of walks us through the process. And I asked him, is there a problem with me filming this just for documentation? Because I'm really curious about your process. And I was, as a contractor, I'm like, I want to see how you guys are going to do this.
Sure you are. No, I'm just kidding.
He's like, yeah, no problem. And I said, oh, by the way, and all the while, Larry, 3 witnesses present because they wanted to watch how this process works. So I've got 3 witnesses there, myself on camera. I let him know that my wife and our 2 dogs are inside of the camper. Is that going to pose a problem? He said, no, that's not a problem. The process that we're going to do, we're just going to raise it up a couple inches so we can simulate the action of the camper's weight being dropped onto the truck's 5th wheel hitch. Then we'll do our measurements. We'll put it back up, and then we'll do measurements again and see how much flex we have. I'm like, sounds fair enough. So camera starts rolling. He grabs his 2 jacks, which were, to the camping world, if you guys out there listening, if you're RVers, if you can picture, you have 2 different jack systems on a camper. You have 6-point hydraulic, or you have 4 or 6-point electric. If you can picture an electric jack, he had 2 of those that were modified on top with a ratchet that you could spin, and that would raise and lower it. So mind you, you guys know to rest a kingpin on 2 of those jacks is not a very strong or stable position. So he puts those under it. I said to him, well, hold on a second. Don't you want me to fold up my stairs? Because when you lower the jacks, your steps are going to go and bend all the way out of place. He's like, oh yeah, roll them up. So I put them on there. And mind you, Larry, anytime I work on a vehicle, a camper, one of my work trucks, work trailers, whatever, what do we do first? You can even answer this one, going. What do I always do first?
Block the wheels.
Yes, bingo.
Otherwise,
Right.
the thing is going to start rolling the minute you. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
And mind you, our RV site we're on has a little bit of a grade to it, so it's slanted, right? So he proceeds to put his jacks underneath, and he raises. We had a 6-point hydraulic system, so he raised the 4 rear jacks, so the entire camper is resting on the front 2 jacks. Okay. He proceeds to crank his up, and then he releases or extends the front jacks, retracts them on our camper, thus taking all of the weight off of the camper. It is now solely resting on his 2 jacks. And what does it do? It goes boom and hits the ground while he's standing there with his arm up like he's going to stop it. I'm like, dude, just let it go. Let it go. Not worth it. So I'm so baffled, Larry. I'm so dumbfounded. The only thing I could say on video, which is still on my channel, I said, oh, that darn incline, like it'll get you every time. And I'm like, I'm just baffled. And I know that she's inside, right? And I'm like, I can't imagine what just happened inside the camper. So I stopped the video immediately because I'm like, we got to go see if she's okay. I got to go check on her, the dogs, etc. So the tech goes back into his trailer while I open the door. I let the stairs down and I open the door. And if you want, or unless you have any questions, I'm going to let her take it from this point. I'm going to plug my ears. Go ahead, honey.
Please, Kay.
So I was in the bedroom with our 2 dogs. We have a big red lab and a little teddy bear dog. And he started raising the jack, and they started kind of like getting worried. And I'm like, okay, no biggie. And I was kneeling down, putting his t-shirts and jeans away. And all of a sudden, without warning, bam. And had our barn door on our bedroom been opened, I would have fallen down the 2 stairs into the kitchen dining area. But instead I hit my shoulder onto the barn door.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so I get up and the F-bomb was flying and I'm like, what? And
I'll vouch for it. It was.
I bet. You literally asked him, oh, is this safe? Because they're inside. Oh, yeah, don't worry about it. I would sue his pants off just for that. But anyway, I'm a lawyer. Go ahead.
Our little dog, he shook for like an hour and a half. He was like terrified and lucky. I'm like, she's never going to go back into a camper ever because she's such a chicken. So I go down the stairs, and had the stairs going outside not been up into the doorway, I would have been out there and I would have said, get your tools, get the F out of here. But I couldn't get out because the stairs were in the doorway. And Greg comes in and I'm like, what the happened? And he's like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like,
You fall down, go boom. That's what happened.
and I was like, what the heck? I was like dumbfounded because, I'm in the bedroom, had no idea. I thought we were for sure going to tip over. It was that much of a jolt. And I'm just like, when
you watch it on
the video.
Yeah, I unfortunately had it in portrait mode instead of landscape mode, but it's actually good in a way because it just zeroes in on the front of the camper. And when it hits the ground, you can watch the non-door side jack just bend, and you can watch the entire front of the camper go like that. So at that point, I knew, I'm like,
well, it
he
didn't
just
even
messed
go
up the
back
rest of the
up.
frame.
It just went down and kind of slid. And
Yeah,
it's like we had the witnesses, and
It's not enough that it's already messed up and they're there to kind of assess it. Now they're causing further damage, not just to the damn thing, but also to your family and your dogs. This is March 4th, Mother's birthday.
Yep.
Happy belated. Continue.
Yeah.
that night, and there was another night a couple nights later where, because that's all I could think about is, I thought we were for sure going to go into the neighbor's park model.
Yeah, you'd said three or four times you thought from your view, the way it felt, you had expressed that you thought it was like going over.
I thought
like
it was literally going to tip over. And so, of course, that night I have a dream that it did tip over on the side, and we're sitting in our neighbor's park model. She has like a carport, and
tell me.
yeah,
I'm
like, what the heck? And then I had another, because when you go to bed and you're thinking about the what ifs,
what could have happened.
And so it was on my mind before I went to sleep. And I'm sure that's probably why I dreamt about it. But when you wake up and your whole body is tense and kind of shaking because you're like bracing yourself. Yeah.
So my neighbor, we'll just call him Kevin C. I don't want to put his name out there. Our next door neighbor who lives there full time in a park model was watching the entire thing from like 15, 20 feet away. He was on his deck watching the whole thing play out. When he dropped the camper, and the tech went back out to his trailer to get some stuff, and I had gone to check on Kay before the SRT came back inside the camper to address our interior problems. Kevin looked at me and he says, well, first I looked at his mouth because the tech was still out in the trailer, and he goes, and I'm like, I know, dude, I know. And he goes, throw him out of here. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, God, Larry, it's like, we had gone through so much at this point, and I didn't know what to do because I'm like, this SRT is my only lifeline. I had to jump through a million hoops to get him here. If I throw him out of here, where's it going to go? And it's just you're so caught up in the whole instant of it, you know?
So does he try it again, or does he just leave? Like, what happens after? What's the aftermath?
Yes, he tried it again. He did it differently that time. I offered to him, and I didn't want to tell him his job, right? My first thought before he dropped it was, don't you want to chalk the wheels? I do, and it works for me. But this time I go, guess what? I've got semi-style, heavy duty wheel chocks. How about I go put those under the tires? He's like, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you should do that.
Might be a good idea.
Right. Yeah. So he did try it again, measured for frame flex. Wanted to tell me that our measurements were within tolerance, but we're close. And I've got a video out there that shows almost 1.25 inches of flex in my kingpin before it engages and raises the camper.
Dear Mother of God. For those of us who are not familiar with the term, what does that mean, 1.25 inches of flex? Please explain.
Sure. So what Lippert, to my understanding, and Grand Design have concluded together by corroborating together, is that there's a certain amount of movement that is to take place, because we all know that structures going down the road need to be able to absorb certain amounts of shock and abrasion on the highway, etc. So moving parts need to move a little bit. Now, on a RV, such as a fifth wheel, because fifth wheels don't have the suspension like a motorhome does. Motorhomes have literally an automotive suspension, only on a heavier duty scale. So they claim, and I backed this up with Lippert because I called and spoke to one of their engineering technicians, and he told me that normal spec on a 380 FL is 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch of movement. He said anything above that, you have a problem. I have it on video 3 different ways that I had over 1 inch of movement in my pin box. But when they came out with their technician, he was trying to tell me it's in spec, and you're just like right on the edge of it. I'm like, Bullschlacker, I have over 1 inch of flex. You want to see my video? Well, no. I showed him one of them anyway. And he said, well, when you measure that way, the deflection on the very front of a kingpin, blah, 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 blah. And he tries to lay all this jargon on me. And I'm like, dude, you should be measuring towards the very front of your pin box, because that actually sits at the very front of your fifth wheel hitch, and you need to be measuring the entire thing, not way down at the bottom of the phylon from the back of where the round part of the kingpin comes down to each point of the front of the frame on the left or right I-beam. Didn't make sense to me. So that's why I measured it 3 different ways, and that's why they finally approved my claim and said, yeah, he's not playing. He took his measurements, and we have to accept it. But fathom this, Larry, if mine only had 1 inch to 1.25 inches, and I've talked to people, and I had a friend who had over 2.5 inches of play in their kingpin.
What?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is such a nightmare scenario, and I think the thing that boggles my mind the most is
about 2.5 inches. You know, for some of you men out there, that may not seem like a lot.
Right.
To the women in the audience, they know. They always know.
Right.
Anyway, that is insane. I mean, again, we're not talking about, let me ask you this. Let's say you had a 2.5 inch flex in your Ford F-150 axle. Would that be acceptable?
That would be a complete shutdown of the industry on that particular line and model of vehicle. And that's a whole other chapter we could spend another video on, I'm sure, because between National Transportation Safety Board, NHTSA, RVIA, and what they... Anyway. Yeah.
The reason I bring it up is because a lot of people who don't own trailers may not be able to picture it. Okay, so now he leaves with the new information that he tries to finagle you. He tries to say, no, you've been measuring it wrong. You're still within the margin of error. You're good to go. But you know what? Just to err on the side of caution, I'll bring it back to my execs. And over the next 9 days, what happens before March 13th?
They wanted us to drive it to Indiana.
You to drive it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I told Greg, there is no way on God's green earth that I'm getting in the truck hauling that to Indiana. You'd have to give me 3 bottles of Xanax. And I'm like, no, I won't. Fly me home. I won't do it.
That wasn't really a debate between us, Larry. We both were like, I ain't taking this thing back. Not going to be me. I made a video of all this and I put it out there on social media because it was so disturbing and so disheartening to me what went down. You know, being a contractor, I understand. I've got guys at work, you know, I mean, I mess up once in a while. I get it. And this was a big one. And I let them know because they saw the video and the next day my phone rang at like 6:15 a.m. because they were not happy that I put that out there. I let them know on the phone. I said, look, you're going to send a driver and you're not sending me a transport driver that's farmed out. You're going to send me an employee that's a driver for your company. You're going to pick the dang thing up and you're going to take it back to your factory. And they said, absolutely, Mr. Carson, no problem. Well, by then they already knew that she was in the camper and that potentially all hell could break loose. So they were more than happy to come and pick it up. And that's when we scheduled for the driver to, you know, they said they'll schedule it. We'll let you know when he's coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens next?
So March 13th of this year was the day that he was to come and pick up the camper. And we knew that day was coming. Luckily for us, one of the neighbors next door has a park model and she wasn't in it. So she said, my God, I saw your videos. I feel so bad for you guys. You've got the keys. We're not there. Just go stay in it, you know, because we're freaking out. We're like, we've got a lot of stuff that we got to, you know, get ready. They wanted the camper fully emptied out for the driver to pick up. So we had to figure out what to do with all of our stuff. I had to figure out how to get all of our stuff home because we didn't know how long they were going to have it. And we knew we were going to be back in Minnesota by the time that they fixed the camper. So the night before the driver was to come and pick up the camper, in the meantime, when we had that week or 8-9 day time window, I interviewed a frame specialist. He's retired. He used to work for GM in automotive frames. He used to work for John Deere. He used to work for Delphi. The man spent 40 some years as an engineer. And I asked him if he would come out and let me do an interview with him and talk to him because I wanted to know, I already knew Larry in the back of my mind. I wanted unequivocal proof from a professional in the industry. Even though he may not design RV frames, he is a frame expert. He designed frames with GM and Delphi and another company that designed heavy-duty potato hauling trucks. So I like to think he knows a thing or two because he's seen a thing or two. So I get him out there, we do an interview, and in a nutshell, he pretty much says what I already knew in my heart, and that was, there's no way that frame is not compromised. Even if he hadn't dropped it, he said, Greg, when you break it down mathematically and you have certain points of a structure that all tie in together, when one fails, it puts more stress on the other part of the structure, more stress than those are rated and spec'd out to do, thus causing catastrophic failure. I said, Fred, the frame guy, I said, Fred, riddle me this. You were in the business that way. You worked for GM. You've seen recalls. You've lived through the famous tailgate recall, et cetera, et cetera. What happens in a case like this? If you knew that you had a fifth wheel product that had much more frame damage, frame failure than I had, what would you do? He said, well, I'll tell you exactly what we did do with a GM truck or whatever it might be. We took that vehicle into a special area. First, we did what's called a body off. They removed the entire body. All the parts of that body would get sent out to the fender departments, the door departments, the trunk departments, the hood departments, the top of the vehicle. They would tear it apart, scrutinize it, stress test it. Then he said what we would do is we would do the same thing with the frame. We would cut it into pieces. We would diagnose where the problems lie. With this failing, what pressure and stress did it cause on this part of the frame? He said we would dissect it for months and months. Do you know how many times they've done that in the RV industry now with fifth? You are really good at math. Really, really good. You are correct. So I knew that there's no way that my frame is not compromised, especially after watching it go on video. So we collaborated. We knew the night before he was to come that we don't want this camper anymore unless you can give me a new one. All we want is what we paid for. Give us a brand new 380 FL. Well, the one it got escalated to, I'm not going to put her name out there because I feel for her. She's good at what she does. She's a single mom, likes her job. So she said, what would it take to get you to be happy with this camper? And I said, you can't guarantee. I said, you're in the warranty department. You don't know anything about engineering. I said, not to discredit you. You don't know anything about engineering or specifications, etc. You can't promise me this frame is going to be fine. Well, I can get a Lippert specialist at the very top, the one who built the frame. We can have it recertified. We'll have them scrutinize it, look it over. And I said, you can't do that without a body off. You just can't. Well, we'll put it in writing. I mean, they tried so hard to sell me on keeping that camper. And I'm like, I don't want it. It ain't going to happen. You dropped it. Deal with it. What are we going to do here?
Well, and when you take something apart, it never goes back the same.
No,
especially an RV. God, no. A fifth wheel? No.
Ask anyone who has had surgery and they have metal in their body. They'll tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's March 13th. You finally have that conversation, come pick this sucker up. I'm done. And then how do we get to March 14th, the NDA? What was the value of this RV?
Well, when I got escalated to Mel Williams, the director of consumer affairs, he's the one that was assigned my case because it escalated to him and he knew we don't want this camper anymore. So he said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to buy you out. We want you to have some peace of mind. We'll buy out the camper. We want you guys we feel bad about what happened. We want you to be able to move forward in life, whatever you want to do. And I said, okay, I'll await your offer. So I got an email back shortly after that with the JD Power and Associates readout of my RV value, which according to him came in at a little over $50,000. We paid $147,000 for that camper back in February of 2022. According to my book value on NADA, JD Power and Associates, that camper books out for over $80,000. And mind you, when I didn't know completely if this was frame flex, Larry, I filed an insurance claim because I went over some bombs on I-40 going through Texas, New Mexico. I mean, I took some bombs. We all know in the RV world, there's some crazy ass highways out there that you get jacked hard. And I didn't know if maybe that's what caused part of the problem. So number one, I filed an insurance claim. Number two, they had already gotten back to me with the value before Grand Design gave me their value. And my value from the insurance company, they figured was $96,000. And Grand Design first came back with 51 or 52, or I can't remember. I still have the email.
That's what they said there.
But get this, Larry, the insurance company said, well, before we can pay the claim, there's one more thing we have to do. Our RV specialists need to contact Grand Design because we know that there's been an ongoing problem with the manufacturer's defect. So now the insurance companies even know that this is a problem.
So you bring them up to 92 some odd thousand with change.
Yep. And that was simply, And that was simply, Larry, because I said, you've got to be kidding me. You want to insult me with 50 some grand when I owe 92 on it? I'm like, the thing's only 2 years old. It's still financed. We owe 92 grand on it. We put 20 some thousand down. And his comeback was, well, I didn't say that's what we were going to give you. I just wanted you to know that's what it's worth. So here's where here's where the snaky stuff starts coming in with that whole thing. So that's how that value came to be. They didn't offer a penny more. They said, we'll pay it off at the bank for you. And said their exact words, if I remember right, were probably best if we part ways.
Yeah.
because at that point they were probably tired of the videos already that I was putting out.
Well, and that morning too, because originally we were planning on keeping some items in the camper, towels, dishes. And so now we're scrambling to totally clear every piece of our property out of there.
Because you're not at home. You can't just like go out and put it in the garage and
No,
Right?
call it a
Yeah.
day.
You're displaced 2,000 miles away.
we had 2 hours to do that.
Yep. So we were scrambling big time. And when he agreed to the payoff, he said, well, there's a form that you have to sign, just some paperwork, standard stuff for the settlement agreement. And Larry, I didn't know at that time. I didn't know what an NDA was. I didn't even know what it was. I just thought when he said settlement agreement that this was going to be how a big firm or manufacturer, whoever settles with their customer. I was thinking it was going to be something to the effect of, Grand Design agrees to pay Huntington Bank $92,300 whatever dollars and change, and then we'll consider this matter closed or whatever.
Yeah.
Not the case. Not the case at all. Far from it.
What do you mean?
So, although it said settlement agreement, it had all the other stuff in it about.
Oh,
yeah.
In that sense. Okay. All right. So let's talk about that, because this is what our audience has been waiting for.
Yeah.
This is all you.
Are you going to hug out?
I am.
All right.
I might
The
come back.
settlement agreement and release that you signed on March 14th, 2024, about a month and a half ago.
Yes.
There's a very interesting, atypical, and I say that as an attorney, clause in there that's basically a in terms of settlement agreements. I mean, it's very common to have an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. Celebrities, attorneys, it's very common to have. In this case, not so much, because here's the thing. If this is a problem, if this is an ongoing problem that may end up in, the dozens or hundreds or thousands of frames that are damaged in RVs and campers that are completely inoperable due to the structural damage, the irreversible structural damage, turning the entire industry into a massive recall. Like we started out with multi-billion-dollar recall. This would be in the billions when all is said and done. Very, very possibly, because we don't know how many of these are out there and at what stage of damage are they in. Because even if it's at, let's hypothetically say, I don't know, 10 to 15% of chance, or not chance. I'm trying to use the terminology you were using. Like basically 10 to 15% potential structural defect, where at 100 the thing just collapses when you sneeze on it. Even a 10% could be catastrophic if you're going down the road and you just hit a bump and the thing just breaks in half and ends up causing a collision to the cars behind you. You may get off scot-free. You just lost a camper or a trailer in the back or an RV. But what about the person in front of you who's tailgating you and now lost their life?
Right.
So those types of NDAs are not very common, especially the one that I read in your case. First of all, I don't know why it even says plural. I feel like they may have been printing these things out by at least the dozens, if not hundreds, because I know you're not alone in this. You said you know some people. Liz said she knows some people. We're talking about Liz Amazing, of course, by the way. Go subscribe to her at Liz Amazing on YouTube. Number 3, consumer, again, it says plural, but it should say consumer, meaning Greg Carson, agrees not to disclose the terms of this agreement in social media posts. Oops, it's on YouTube now.
Oopsie.
Any disclosure that contravenes this section will be a breach of this agreement and will entitle Grand Design to recoup any payments made hereunder. So I understand they already paid you.
Yes, they directly paid off the bank.
The bank.
The lien holder.
And now
Yep.
they can choose to basically go back to the bank and say, yoink, pursuant to this agreement. Consumer, meaning Greg, has further offered to take down the YouTube channel. He's not even talking about, this agreement is not talking about like a YouTube video. They're talking about the entire channel upon consummation of this agreement. What is that about? What is this?
I think that came from when he talked about this agreement to sign, and he said, look, for us to do this, I'm going to need you to remove your disparaging and defamatory videos, etc., and not speak about this. And I thought he meant I had to remove my channel altogether, because I'm like, well, I'm not a big YouTuber and I haven't been at this very long. And I'm like, so I guess, are you saying that I have to remove my channel or something to that effect? I can't remember verbatim, Larry, but there was talk back and forth about either removing the channel or just removing the videos that were coming out against Grand Design.
Mm-hmm. And number 5, consumers, again, I don't understand why this is plural, because this is still undersigned, just Greg Carson, agrees not to disclose the terms of this settlement to anyone except as required by law or as reasonably necessary to taxing authorities, accountants, banks, or their attorneys, yada, 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 and further agrees not to disparage, defame, or otherwise criticize the manufacturers or dealership, which I'll take a pause here because, you know, disparaging, I'm personally also against. I don't like when people disparage. I had a prosecutor who was disparaging me just the other day, and I objected to it, and the judge sustained my objection and admonished the jury because opposing counsel had no argument. The prosecutor was losing his case, so he figured the best way is to say Mr. Forman this and Mr. Forman that. And I said, look, you need to shut the hell up and talk about the case because you can't do this, and the judge agreed. So disparaging, I agree with. Defaming, absolutely, I agree with. Thou shalt not falsely state. You know, if you were to come out and start saying like these RV Grand Designs have gremlins in them and they're multiplying, and actually anytime you buy an RV, you get the idea. Just creating things that are fictional, not real, don't exist, utterly false. These things like catch on fire randomly, you know, which none of that is happening. We don't have any proof of that. But this is where I have trouble with it. Or otherwise criticize the manufacturers or the dealership. So the fact that the dealership sold you a faulty RV with a frame you had no idea was going to collapse 2 years from now, or not collapse, but not be up to snuff. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
You know, okay, maybe the dealership is not at fault. All right. But you're not allowed to criticize the manufacturer that is clearly at fault here with the engineers who have made the calculations. I remember, you know, 2 very famous cases, and every time I look at this, the only 2 things I can think about are the Ford Pinto and
That was always a hot topic. Yeah.
and Takeda pharmaceutical manufacturing, where it was a multi-billion with a B verdict by a jury. It was the first of its kind in, I think, 2015. It was either $8 or $9 billion verdict against Takeda. Not the airbag manufacturer. It's similar spelling, but a similar pronunciation, different name. You guys can look this up. And I don't remember what happened to that verdict, but anyway, I remember lawyers talking about it. I went to a conference and they talked about. They played a part of a deposition. You're not going to believe this, Greg. It was a Japanese engineer on deposition, on camera, looking like me right at you right now, looking at the camera and saying, well, part of our mathematical calculations was how many people these drugs are going to kill and how many lawsuits we're going to have to pay out, and then we factor it into the price of the product. It's like when you hear these words, it's like, oh, so human life is a statistic. The last person who said that openly was Joseph Stalin before that. So, and we know what happened with the Russians and when he was in power.
Right.
So, furthermore, I continue on. So criticizing the manufacturers, you're not allowed to talk poorly about their faulty again, I find that very shady, but it kind of goes in with number 3. So you can't criticize them with your friends. You can't criticize them on social media. Okay, that's taken down. All right. That's all undone starting today. Furthermore, consumer agrees to remove current social media content, again, disparaging, defaming, there it is again, otherwise criticizing the manufacturers or dealership. 90% of that statement I don't have a problem with, but it's the criticizing the manufacturer, which needs to be out there, needs to be spoken. And this is why I had you on my channel to begin with, Greg, and you and your wife. Consumers, however, are free to state that they reached an agreement with Grand Design to resolve any issues between them. So the positive spin on it, oh yeah, they took care of everything for me, you're allowed to say. Exactly.
Right.
So you signed it, and they sent a check to Huntington National Bank to pay off the $92,389.51 balance to pay off the loan. So you are walking away, in the hole, $50,000, $60,000 some odd $1,000. But you used the thing for a couple of years. Is it worth the value of how much you used it? I don't know. That's between you and God, I suppose. But here comes the $1 million question, Greg. Because I want to know, between March 14th and today, you had a change of heart. You sent me an email, I believe it was Friday, April 26th or whatever it was, outlining your situation to me. And I want to know what changed. Why the sudden change of heart 6 weeks after the fact? What happened in your mind?
A bit of a plethora of circumstances, if I can, and I can't categorize, I guess, one over the other. First of all, well, I take that back. Yeah, I can. The biggest one being the way that we were rushed into that NDA to sign off on it, to make this go away, to shut us up and want to silence us forever with everything that happened. And between a wife who was still in a state of almost shock at what had happened to her. I mean, I can empathize with her, what happened. That whole event was just horrific for her. And shame on me, because we had so much going on. I didn't even ask her till like the next day or two what happened. And I had seen her kind of rubbing her shoulder a little bit. And I'm like, you okay? Well, I was a little bit sore, and I'm like, you know what, honey, I'm a husband. Tell me, what was it like for you to be in the camper? So she shared all that with me, and that made me very agitated. The day they picked up the camper, we were dealing with her son's 2-year anniversary of committing in Minnesota while we were still in Arizona. And that was very hard to deal with, being 2,000 miles away. And it still to this day affects her. That's the whole reason we left Arizona last 2023 in March. She came to me the 1-year anniversary and said, I don't want to be here. Let's go somewhere. And we were dealing with that. We were dealing with another friend of ours who passed away in December. We were dealing with one of our best friends' wives who suddenly passed away weeks before back in Minnesota from cancer, who was right beside us for 7 years in Arizona, and she got rushed back. There was so much going on, and we didn't really have much time to process what was happening. We wanted this just to be over with. We're displaced from our house. I hurriedly signed that NDA, and I have a lot of thoughts about NDAs, Larry. If you want me to elaborate why part of the reason is I broke, I would be happy to elaborate on that part.
We're all ears, Greg.
So after thinking about this a lot, and especially you people out there that are thinking about being bought out and signing an NDA, I'm going to beg you and beseech you to think twice, and I'm going to tell you why. Take it from someone who's living through it right now. An NDA does nothing but protect the person or the organization that is doing wrong. It is completely in their favor. I think NDAs are used for hiding wrongdoing, for hiding misconduct. it conceals, it excuses, it minimizes, it lets them be a repeat offender. And I think that's wrong. It silences you, the person who has been a victim, who's been offended. It's more or less a prison sentence for you, a gag order for you, if you will. In some cases, it puts you in a position of having to be a liar because you can't tell the truth. And when you get confronted from someone or something or an entity that wants to know the truth, you can't say anything because you're living in fear day after day. Silence in this situation is like a prison because when you can't talk about it, you relive it over and over and over, and there's nothing you can do about it. And we both know, Larry, nobody benefits from status quo. Nobody. These gag orders, these prison sentences, allowing them to misuse and abuse their power because they have the money, it doesn't protect the victim at all. It doesn't help the victim. And I find it very interesting that right now in other countries like Ireland, England, Wales, Canada, a few others that I can't think of, they're lobbying. Lawyers and lawmakers are lobbying as we speak to change the laws. They want to have what's called a can't buy silence law. Why is that?
Whoa.
Could it be they're onto something, Larry? Could it be that they know that you're victimizing the victim even further? I can't begin to tell you the stress that has caused in our life and our relationship, not being able to talk about it at all. I've been put in a position to lie about it because I've been asked direct questions from people, and people aren't dumb. When someone asks you, you got bought out, didn't you? Well, I'm not at liberty to say. Well, if you didn't get bought out, you'd be able to say. So not only does it make you a liar, it makes you look stupid. And honestly, Larry, in my opinion, NDAs is equivalent to silencing the public as well. People, hear me loud and clear. If you have a person that signs an NDA because they know an offense has been committed, but that manufacturer or that employer, whoever it might be, wants to buy your silence, that holds back the truth. It holds the truth from the public. It's cheating the public. When you have a person that can't tell the truth like me, who signed an NDA, I think that's just wrong. I absolutely believe it's wrong. You know, Larry, we grew up in a strict household. My father's a retired Army doctor who was a very loving man, very fair. He was a heavy disciplinarian, but he also taught us in rural North Dakota growing up about values. I can't tell you how it cut me like a knife when I had all these videos out there in the backing of the RV community, and then I went silent. I had to go silent. I felt like the biggest piece of shit in the world because all of them were like, you're a sellout, you're a backstabber, we're not watching your videos anymore because you're a liar, et cetera, et cetera. And the hardest part about that, Larry, is I completely understand when a person has to do what they have to do for their situation. And everybody's situation is different. And I get that. But it doesn't take away the pain at all. And it's, in my opinion, it's so wrong. And I'm so upset with Grand Design about how they rushed us to the table, and especially with her. I'll tell you right now, Larry, I wish I'd have known a guy like you because I would have lawyered up that an hour after he left, now that I know what I know. Absolutely. Because they need to be accountable. And honestly, not just Grand Design, all the RV manufacturers, they need to be accountable. But I'm going to say shame on you, Grand Design, because you're the one covering all this up. You're the one hiding all of this. You're the one that's doing all these silent buybacks. I'll bet I get a call or an email every 3 to 5 days of someone that's facing a buyback and an NDA, and they're scared to death and they don't know what to do. My advice to them is, you know what? Before you sign that piece of paper, you better lawyer up. Call a Larry Forman if you got one in your state. Lawyer up.
I can practice in all 50, by the way. I can pro hack Vici, so you don't need a Larry Forman in your state. I am the Larry Forman in your state, but yes. Wow.
Oh.
Man, that was powerful.
It's a sentence, Larry. It's a prison sentence, and that's how it makes you feel. It's demeaning. It's degrading. It's kicking you in the balls when you're already down because you can't talk about it. You can't vent. it puts you in a hell, absolute hell.
It's a prison sentence for your mind.
Yep.
You know, my girlfriend and I, we saw The Matrix in theaters yesterday, the 25-year anniversary, and it's one of the quotes actually in that movie. It's like a prison for your mind. You know, when Morpheus educates Neo, when Neo is still stuck in the Matrix, or maybe he just freed him. Irrelevant.
Right.
It's very reminiscent of what you're speaking. Then NDA is kind of like the Matrix gets you. You know, the corporation, in this case, Grand Design, wants to protect itself from liability, from people having to come in the hundreds, maybe thousands, and saying, I also have a structural defect. And instead of making money, they're not selling these things because nobody wants to buy them because they're all screwy, and they have to go back, spend money, and instead of cranking, I'm sure they have plenty of money sitting, but you know, in their stockpile, and if they don't, they're idiots for not having a good business strategy, because every good business owner knows
this is Winnebago, Larry. We're talking about Winnebago. They own Grand Design. I mean, this is, anybody can look them up on the stock market.
They're multi-billionaires. They're multi-billionaires, and
that's what scares the hell out of me. They got a lot deeper pockets than I do, but I've reached a point, you know, like I told viewers the other day, Larry, I got 2 big scars on my head because 2 years ago I had a massive brain bleed, and it just affected my life.
Oh, geez.
And I was blessed to recover fully. Well, maybe. I was blessed to get a pretty full recovery. And I'm telling you what, if any of you watching have ever had an experience where you kissed death on the lips but didn't jump in bed, it changes you. It changes you. And this is what broke my heart, honestly, Larry. This is what broke my heart over this entire thing. Was in the bottom of my heart, I didn't want to accept it. I just wanted them to buy out the camper. That's all. Why couldn't they have just bought out the camper instead of try to silence me and let people know the truth?
Well, and this is what I was getting to. So this multi-billion-dollar industry is not interested in recalls. They're not interested in helping people who need this help. They want to keep it damage control. It's damage control, because if they can silence you, and they can silence, you know, Beverly, and they can silence Liz, and they can silence Joe, and you know, everybody, then they can at least keep the liability at a minimum.
Yeah.
If this thing explodes and more videos
Problems
get out there,
you might smell some in the rose garden. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the reason I was darting my eyes is because this is a YouTube video.
Right. Exactly.
And videos and posts and tweets and everything get out there. What's going to happen? People are going to start checking their own RVs for this type of damage. Are they at 3/4 of an inch, more than an inch? Are they within, you know, 1/4 of an inch like they're supposed to be?
Yeah.
And if this thing gets out of control, and they know that it might, because people will begin examining their RVs, and there's going to have to be a massive recall. They're going to lose a lot of money. Now, they're still going to be fine, but they don't want the drama, I suppose, that they created. They want to leave it at the door. They don't want, you know, when they come knocking in, can we enter? Say, no, you may not enter. We're not interested in whatever you're buying. Well, it's your product that we're selling back to you, and that's where the problem is. And this is why you chose to speak. And I, if I may, this is one of the most incredible interviews, and I've done quite a lot over my last, 10-year YouTube career. Nothing compares, Greg. This is the most incredible interview I have ever done, and maybe will ever do in my lifetime. So, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. And second of all, I applaud you for your bravery. I emailed you the potential consequences, because I, as a lawyer, again, it's not complicated, but I had to make sure you understand the potential consequences of basically this agreement unraveling. And you understood, and you said, yes, Larry, I hear you, and I still want to move forward. And I said, as long as you understand My platform is yours, sir.
Yes.
And you said yes, and here we are.
Yes,
So
you did. And I thank you for that very much so. And I will confirm that right now on a world platform that, yes, you certainly did. And I specifically and illicitly told you that too late, Larry. I already started blowing that referee's whistle a couple days ago. And it's tough, Larry, because, we loved Grand Design at first. We really, really loved them. We've been Harley Davidson people for a super long time. We buy into the brand for a reason. Um, we love their motorcycles. We love the family feeling that you get when you buy into the Harley Davidson name. I've never had a problem with Harley Davidson ever taking care of whether it be a recall, whether it be a repair. Never got the runaround. They never said, oh, well, we have to prove this, this, and this first. There was never any finger here, finger there, finger everywhere pointing between companies like Grand Design and Lippert. Oh my God, I can't tell you the email exchanges trying to get clear answers on certain things as simple as lag bolts and suspension parts. That's a whole different story. But it's very saddening to me how the reports that are coming out, and I just can't wrap my arms around it, Larry. Why would they keep paying out millions of dollars in NDAs and hush money and millions of dollars on warranty, repair issues, and instead of just building a better product, tighten up your quality control, doing stuff on the line, getting straight answers for people has been such a battle.
well, can I maybe try and answer that for you? Maybe this is my suspicion, and this is pure conjecture. This is pure speculation. I'm not trying to defame anybody here. But you, as an engineer, you may appreciate the gravity of my thoughts and my innermost suspicions. Because I've been exposed to this for at least a couple of weeks now, since my interview, right before my interview with Liz Amazing, and the reason she came on my channel. Much like the Ford Pinto and the Takedas of years past, and the airbag, by the way, the new Takeda with the airbag, we've heard the term garbage in, garbage out. When you have a faulty foundation, a bad foundation, you're going to have problems every step along the way. Is it possible, this is my conjecture, this is my speculation, is it possible that somewhere along the way, the engineers, and I'm talking at the bottom level, okay? I'm not talking at like production or anything crazy. I'm talking on the design level. Maybe they hired an engineer or a group of engineers that kind of sat down and said, look, you guys are making this much. We can be making you this much. You can shave off, and it seems negligible. All you have to do is change from this material to that material, from like metal to Teflon, from this to that, whatever. I'm making words up. It doesn't matter. The point is, they realized instead of making like $100,000 per unit, we can make $150,000 per unit. And they're making, millions and maybe hundreds of millions of dollars extra per year thanks to this new foundational change at the ground floor. I mean, we're talking like if you want to imagine a car, imagine everything taken off of it except the metal carcass, the skeleton. And the engine is not even in the car yet. Like that's how skeletal we're talking. And in that's where they screwed things up. And then they built everything on top of it. And now because again, you keep talking about the frame. The frame is the skeleton, if I may say. It's the not even the nervous system. It's the bones, right, of the RV. Am I correct?
Oh, it's where we first start when we build a house or an addition or a deck, the foundation.
The foundation. So if you screw up the foundation, it doesn't matter what you do afterwards. It's all going to be garbage.
Right.
And I think they made a mistake. Is it possible that they simply made a mistake somewhere here trying to save maybe a few bucks, which multiplies into the millions or hundreds of millions, and now they're regretting it and they don't know what to do because they realize like, uh-oh, if this gets out, we are literally done for, and we're going to have to unravel maybe 5 years of RVs.
Right. Um,
That's my thought. That's the thought that I've been having.
well, in light of that, Larry, and I'm going to tread lightly here because I'm going to say and use words like John Livingston, the honey badger over on HBRV Lifestyle, the podcast. He uses the word allegedly quite a bit. And I'm sure you've heard that in the courtroom many, many times. But as you may guess, I'm very tightly connected to a lot of people that are tight to holding RV manufacturers to the fire, whether it be the frame manufacturer, the RV itself manufacturer. I'm going to give a special cred here to someone that you may want to consider talking to, because you want to talk about a plethora and a wealth of information about warranties, failures, all that kind of stuff. One of the biggest leading names right now in the service industry, who, by the way, won't even do service work for Grand Design because of issues with how that's all been handled. Dustin Simpson with California RV Specialists, and his Facebook page is called Grand Design RV Owner in the Shop with Dustin. I had an hour and 40-minute conversation with that gentleman Sunday night. And Larry, you think I've got bombs to drop? Talk to Dustin. He gets shipped all over the country, from what I understand. Many, many states pay him, big profile attorneys pay him to get on a plane and go inspect RVs for failure, for lawsuits, for anything from accidents to whatever it may be. But that, coupled with what he takes into the shop on a daily basis, what does this tell you? When you have someone as high profile as Dustin Simpson, who works on celebrities' RVs out in California, has a dedicated Facebook page that says Grand Design RV Owner in the Shop, why would he make a page like that if this wasn't a huge chronic problem that Grand Design does not want to come out and talk about for fear of spiting their CEO's cutting off of their nose to spite their face? What's going on here, people? We're not dumb. This is the age of social media. We can shop online. We can research online. We can find out anything we want to online about a product. But guess what you won't get? You won't get the truth when guys like me get silenced by companies like Grand Design. Period. What do they keep covering this up for, Dustin? Tell us. And you, Larry, as an attorney, why? Why would they want to risk this when their customer base, they're losing touch with their customer base because the customers know through social media is getting out there long before I came clean. People like Kevin and Alicia at Paving New Paths, Jeff over at My Bucket List Day, so many others who had to deal with this frame flex and frame failure. I just don't get why Grand Design wants to hide it.
If I may interject, I think it's the initial attempt to try and cover it up, sweep it under the rug, and hope maybe it's small enough to where it will go away. Once it continues, which it will, they will move on to the next phase, and that is exploring potential options of mass resolution or mass recall and attempting to minimize the gravity of the situation, and maybe claiming that these frames, like you said, can be repaired. Just bring them in. We'll fix them up for you. You'll be good to go. You'll be on your way. And you know what? I guarantee that 9 out of 10 people, because you're an exception. You are the most dangerous consumer of RVs because you understand the structural meaning behind all the terms that they use. The average consumer of RVs probably doesn't speak and understand these terms in the way that you do. And Grand Design can take advantage of that. So if and when they do, 90 out of 100, 900 out of 1,000 that they're going to be resolving are going to be those shoddy, just weld an extra piece of metal in there and you're good, man. Don't look at it. Don't look at it. It's all set. It's all good. You're good to go for the next 15 years.
right?
We'll even give you a 1-year warranty just so you can go home happy.
Yeah,
And they're hoping for a quick fix. And you know what? That's what companies do. They're never going to fully own up to it and say, you know what? Yeah, we really screwed the pooch on this one. So how about a massive recall? It never starts there. I mean, the Ford Pinto, if you remember, they had deaths. They had dozens of deaths. They had blood on their hands before they finally admitted their problem. And that was years later. First, they had a massive recall, and then years later, they admitted the problem. So it wasn't they wake up one day and say, oopsie daisy, we better step up to the plate and have a press conference.
right,
No,
right.
companies don't do that. So, but
Well,
anyway,
also, Larry, if you want to really hear fact-based, all the way down to surveys, conversations, documented, proof, validated, the Facebook page that Pete and Lisa West started is only maybe a month, 5 weeks old, which is approaching 2,000 members. And it's Grand Design, I'll get it right, Grand Design RV Major Issues on Facebook, run by Pete and Lisa West. You may want to do a little digging there because the plot thickens. They actually are in Indiana right now getting warranty work done on their Momentum 395. Pete the dude is an absolute saint. He does this all on his own time. He is so dedicated and invested in all this he just wants the truth to get out there, and he just wants to help people. Well, he's got a laundry list of people, whether it be NDAs or who got rejected and then got accepted because they might have been second owners and Grand Design didn't want to help them at first, but now the problem is so big they're starting to help second owners. And I think Grand Design is so overwhelmed with this problem right now. And it's just sad that they won't come out publicly. It's almost too late. It's almost like they're so far down the rabbit hole that they've got so much egg on their face now that long before I came along and went public, their consumers and would-be buyers were just falling right and left because long before I started, people have been doing this for almost a year, Larry. If you go over at My Bucket List Day and Jeff's channel or Paving New Paths with Kevin and Alicia, they were going through this long before I even knew what it was. And getting denied, getting the runaround, saying it's your fault, you were overweight, you didn't haul your camper right, or you this, you that. They didn't want to take blame, but now,
sure.
With all the irrefutable proof, they can't deny it anymore.
And I think part of it was the pandemic. People wanted these RVs. There was an influx in demand, not enough supply. There's a lot of questions there. But listen, we've been going for quite some time. I don't wanna keep you here longer than you need to be here. So
Sure.
I just wanted to say, Greg, again from the bottom of my heart, this was one of the most captivating interviews I've ever done in my entire career, in my entire life, both on YouTube and not on YouTube. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. One thing my dad always left us with, and this one wore on me pretty hard, you guys, and this was one of the reasons I came clean, because it literally haunted me at night. I love my parents so much for teaching us to stand up for those who are weak, to stand up for those without a voice. And if you can't find the right leader, be one. And
True.
Words that stuck in my head that he would tell me are, those that think we live in a time where there are no heroes, well, they just don't know where to look. And if you can't find them, be one.
Them.
I'm not saying that's me. I'm just saying it to anybody who's listening. You all have a voice. We're all one body. We all have a voice. Use it. If you can't, or you're too weak, go to those places that will let you, because honor, integrity, and respect are such lost things right now. And, respect is earned, trust is given, loyalty is displayed. Break one, you break all three. And I think that's what a lot of people have felt right now with Grand Design or the RV industry. Yeah.
got
I can't
it,
thank you enough, Larry, for having me. I'm deeply appreciative for your platform and for what you do, and we'll see where this goes. I gave you my phone number. You might want to keep it because if Guido shows up at my door, I don't know what I'm going to do. This is pretty.
Do you have my number? I'm going to give it to you right on the air because it's all public. It's on my website. It's 502.
Yes, sir.
931.
Preach it.
6788. Okay, that's our office line. Call it anytime, any hour. If I'm awake, I will answer my phone. Or my answering service is actually there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I should say. And if I'm awake, I will return your call at the earliest. I ask my former clients how many of them I spoke to at 3 o'clock in the morning back in the day when, well, now I'm in a relationship, so I'm usually asleep at that hour. But back in my heyday when I would go out and have a grand old time and somebody and say, 1 moment, I have to step away, excuse me. Yep,
right.
Hello. Yep. And so that's, God forbid, I hope I never have to hear from you, but you heard my words. I can represent anyone, anywhere, even in other countries, but we're talking about the United States of America. Just because I'm licensed in Kentucky doesn't mean that I'm confined to the state. I can practice anywhere in this country. All I need is local counsel to pro hac vici, attach myself to them, and off we go to the races. So
I loved in your
races, it's almost Derby time. So
I loved in your video with Liz where you were closing out, and I think I mentioned this to you in your email when you kind of smiled and looked at the camera and said, "I have eyes and ears everywhere." I kind of told my wife that. I'm like, I want that guy. I want that guy. If I could give myself a shameless plug,
please.
And I want people to know I'm not sponsored. I don't get paid by advertising. I don't have any of that stuff. I'm just a YouTube guy, blue collar, without the fancy stuff. And all I want to do is bring some truth and knowledge to what's going on with the RV industry. CRUZIN with the CARSONS, CRUZIN with the CARSONS. Please go to the channel and subscribe so you can be aware of how this is all going to unfold. There's a lot of stuff coming up, Larry, and I'm going to keep you posted as well if you want to follow the story. It's just, we're just getting warmed up. That's what I think. It's coming.
Off screen, backstage, we were talking about Breaking Bad, and now I can't get the image of you being Walter White in his infancy, driving the Winnebago. It just clicked. I'm like, wait a second. Am I talking to Walter White? Where's Jesse? Where? Skylar,
be glad I didn't have a shirt on that said, "Yo, bitch."
I love it. I wanted to thank you all for coming. This was, like I said, I am not joking, one of the most incredible interviews I have ever done in my entire life. I was so captivated. I lost complete track of time. I don't know what time it is right now. This is not an exaggeration. I've never been so drawn to someone else speaking about a topic before in my life for such a long period of time. I mean, of course, we've all heard stories. We've all heard, good interviews. I mean, you're captivated for a couple of minutes, but not for a straight 90 minutes. This is unprecedented, folks. So thank you all for joining. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to their channel. CRUZIN with the CARSONS. Is that what it is? CRUZIN with the CARSONS.
Yes, sir. CRUZIN.
CRUZIN with the CARSONS. Oh, they brought their puppo, the one that can't even go on the CRUZIN anymore because he has been rolling around in one of them for.
You saw Anchorman 2, right?
Yes. Who hasn't? Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below. This has been Raw Law Unfiltered with your favorite host, the DUI Guy Plus, and I will see you all in the next video tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Bye, everybody.